6:47 a.m. Tuesday. David found them in her purse, not looking, just reaching for her phone charger. She'd asked him to grab it before she left for her sister's place. Again. His hand brushed past receipts, lipstick, a crumpled tissue, then metal, cold. 2 keys on a blue fabric keychain, worn smooth like they'd been turned 1,000 times. He held them up to the kitchen light. The ocean fog pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning their $15 million view into gray nothing. These weren't their keys. Their keys were brushed steel on a leather Mercedes fob. These were cheap brass, hardware store keys, the kind that opened modest doors in neighborhoods where people knew their neighbors' names. He set them on the marble counter next to 2 coffee cups. His, empty. Hers, untouched and cold. The house was silent, except for the ocean. It had always been silent. 15 years earlier, late April, David Marshall met Elena Reyes in a hospital cafeteria at 2 in the morning. He was there because his father had just died, pancreatic cancer. 4 months, from diagnosis to a bed in ICU to nothing. David sat with lukewarm coffee that tasted like aluminum, staring at discharge papers he didn't remember signing. She was there because her mother wouldn't die. Elena stood at the vending machine, feeding it crumpled bills. The machine kept spitting them back. She tried again. Her hands shook. On the 7th attempt, she slammed her palm against the plastic. "Hey," David stood, walked over. "Let me." She looked at him. Dark circles under darker eyes, scrubs that said Mercy General across the pocket, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "I don't need—" He fed a crisp 5 into the machine. "What do you want?" She stared at the buttons. "I don't know anymore." He pressed C4. "Peanut butter crackers." The machine hummed, delivered. He handed them to her. "Thank you." Her voice cracked on the second word. They sat at separate tables, but the cafeteria was empty except for a janitor and fluorescent lights that buzzed like trapped insects. After 5 minutes of silence, she spoke. "Stroke. 3 weeks ago. They said she'd die in days." Elena opened the crackers but didn't eat. "She's still here, still on the ventilator, still running up bills we can't pay." David looked at her, really looked. Mid-30s maybe. Wedding ring absent. Scrubs meant she worked here but sat here at 2 a.m. meant she also lived here. "I'm sorry," he said. "Everyone's sorry." She finally bit into a cracker, chewed without tasting. "Sorry doesn't pay ICU bills. We're at $340,000. My brothers in San Diego can't help. My father died when I was 12. It's just me, and I'm a medical translator, not a doctor. I make $48,000 a year." She said it flatly, a math problem with no solution. "How long can you keep her on support?" David asked. "The hospital gave us 2 weeks. Then they transfer her to county, which means—" Elena closed her eyes. "Which means I let my mother die in a hallway because I'm poor." David's father had died in a private suite, mahogany furniture, a view of the coast. His death had cost $60,000. David paid it the way other people paid for groceries. "What's your mother's name?" "Rosa." "Why?" "I want to know who I'm helping." Elena looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. David pulled out his phone, opened his banking app. "What hospital department handles payments?" "Wait, what are you—" "Patient Financial Services." "What floor?" "Second. But you can't just—" "Yes, I can." He stood. "Come with me." 20 minutes later, Elena watched a night shift administrator confirm a wire transfer. $340,000. Posted immediately. Account balance, 0. The administrator printed a receipt, handed it to Elena. "Mrs. Reyes's account is settled. She can remain in ICU as long as medically necessary." Elena stared at the paper. Her hands started shaking again, but differently. They walked outside. The hospital parking lot smelled like jasmine and ambulance diesel. Dawn was still an hour away. "Why?" Her voice was barely there. David leaned against his car, a black Mercedes he'd bought the week his father's estate cleared. "My dad died 6 hours ago. Upstairs, room 407. I held his hand and he didn't know who I was. Morphine, maybe. Or just time." He looked at the sky. No stars. LA never had stars. "He left me everything. The business, the investments, the house in Palisades. I'm 37 years old, and I just inherited $8 million from a man I saw twice a year because I was too busy building my own career to visit." Elena said nothing. "I can't save my father, but I can save yours." He looked at her. "That's why." She started crying. Not soft tears, gut-deep sobs that bent her forward. David didn't touch her, didn't know her well enough, just stood there while a stranger broke open under a parking lot light. When she could breathe again, she said, "I don't know how to pay you back." "You don't have to." I don't even know your name." "David Marshall." "Elena Reyes." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I owe you my mother's life." "You don't owe me anything." But she looked at him like she did. Like she'd just been handed a debt she'd spent decades repaying. 3 weeks later, Rosa Reyes died peacefully. No hallway, no panic. Just Elena holding her hand in a private room while machines beeped their quiet goodbyes. David attended the funeral, brought flowers, stood in the back. After, Elena found him in the parking lot. "I've been thinking," she said. "You gave my mother dignity. That's not something you forget." "I'm glad I could help." "David." She stepped closer. "You're alone. I can see it. The way you stood apart at the service. The way you don't wear a ring but check your phone like you're hoping someone texted." He said nothing. She was right. "I'm alone too. My mother was all I had. Now I have a paid-off medical bill, in an empty apartment, and no idea what I'm supposed to do next." The sun was setting, gold light on her face. "We could try not being alone together," she said, "if you want." David looked at her, a woman he'd known for less than a month. A woman who looked at him like he'd hung the moon because he'd written a check. He thought, this is not love. He thought, but maybe it could become love. He said, okay. They married 11 weeks later. Small ceremony. Richard was best man. Rose's empty chair in the front row. David thought he'd saved her. Elena thought she'd saved him. Neither realizes they'd both just chosen a lifeboat that was already sinking. The first 3 years were good, or at least they looked good. David bought the house in Palisades 18 months after the wedding. 5 bedrooms, ocean view, Architectural Digest spread waiting to happen. Elena walked through it the first time and cried. "It's too much," she said. "It's ours," David corrected. She decorated it like a museum. Neutral tones. Expensive art she researched but didn't love. Fresh flowers, delivered every Monday. The house appeared in Coastal Living magazine. Modern Serenity in the Pacific Palisades. Elena kept 3 copies. She never mentioned that she missed her old apartment, the one with thin walls where she could hear her neighbor's TV and feel less alone. David worked, investment consulting, private equity, clients in Singapore and Dubai who called at midnight. He'd take the calls in his home office, door closed, while Elena arranged throw pillows in rooms no one sat in. "You here?" she'd ask when he emerged at 2 a.m. "Physically," he'd answer. It became their joke. A joke that stopped being funny but kept getting told. James was born in year 2, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. David made it to the hospital 20 minutes after delivery, stuck in a meeting he couldn't leave. Elena's brother Carlos flew in from San Diego. He was the one who cut the cord. David held his son and felt something crack open in his chest. Love, terror, the weight of another person's entire existence. "We made something perfect," he whispered. Elena, exhausted, smiled. "Now we just have to not break him." They didn't break him. But they didn't exactly build him either. David hired a nanny, Maria from Guatemala, who raised James while David worked, and Elena did what exactly? She took yoga classes, volunteered at a literacy center, learned to make sourdough, hosted dinner parties where everyone complimented the house and left early. "Do you like your life?" Richard asked her once at James's 2nd birthday party. Elena paused, frosting cupcakes. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." She set down the spatula. "I have everything I'm supposed to want." "That's not what I asked." Yet she went back to frosting. "Then I don't know how to answer." The coffee ritual started in year 3. David began waking at 5:30 a.m., earlier than he needed to, but sleep had become something he resented. He'd make 2 cups, French press, expensive beans from a roaster in Silver Lake that Richard told him about. He'd set one in front of Elena's side of the bed. She'd wake up an hour later to find it cold. She'd drink it anyway, never complained, never said, "I'd rather have you than the coffee." He thought he was being thoughtful. She thought he was avoiding her. Both were right. Grace Chen entered their lives in year 5, not as a mistress, as Mercy. Rosa Reyes, Elena's mother, the one David had saved, was dying again. This time for real. The stroke had left damage. 5 years later, her body was surrendering in pieces. Kidney failure. Congestive heart failure. Hospice recommended. Elena fell apart. David threw money at it. Private hospice care, the best nurses. A hospital bed set up in Rosa's small apartment in Boyle Heights. Grace was the night nurse, 43 years old, soft voice, steady hands. She'd been doing hospice for 12 years, long enough to know that dying isn't the hardest part. Waiting to die is. She sat with Rosa during the 3 a.m. terrors, held her hand, sang songs in Mandarin, her own mother's lullabies. Rosa didn't speak Mandarin, but fear is universal. So is comfort. Elena would arrive, after putting James to bed, drive 40 minutes in traffic, sit in her mother's tiny living room while Grace made tea. "You don't have to stay," Elena said the first night. "My shift doesn't end until sunrise," Grace replied. "Besides, your mother sleeps better when there's noise nearby. We can talk, or sit quiet, whatever helps." They talked. Not about dying, about living. Elena told her about the magazine feature, the yoga classes she hated, the dinner parties where she smiled until her face hurt, Why do you go? Grace asked. Because that's what you do when you live in a $15 million house. Is it? Elena looked at her. Grace wasn't judging, just asking. I don't know anymore, Elena admitted. Grace poured more tea. I left my marriage 3 years ago, 20-year relationship. She was a good person. I was a good person. We were terrible together. Everyone told us to stay. You're so lucky to have each other. But lucky isn't the same as happy. Elena felt something shift in her chest. She? She. Grace smiled. Sorry if that's... No. Elena set down her cup. No, it's not. They looked at each other. The apartment was quiet, except for Rosa's labored breathing and the hum of medical equipment. Thank you for taking care of my mother, Elena said. It's my job. It feels like more than that. Grace didn't look away. Sometimes the job and the person overlap. Rosa died 6 weeks later, peacefully, Grace holding one hand, Elena the other. At the funeral, David stood in the back again. Showed up late from a conference call, Elena noticed. Said nothing. Grace stood beside Elena at the grave, held an umbrella over both of them while rain fell. David stood apart, under his own umbrella, checking his phone. Richard watched the whole thing. Later, driving David home, he said, You're losing her. What? Your wife. You're losing her. David stared out the window. She's grieving. I'm giving her space. Bro. Richard gripped the steering wheel. Space isn't what she needs. She needs you to show up. Actually show up, not just pay for things. I paid for her mother to die with dignity. I know, and that was beautiful, 5 years ago. But what have you done this week? This month? Do you even know what she's feeling right now? David opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't know. He hadn't asked. 6 months after Rosa died, Elena started leaving the house at odd hours. Where are you going? David would ask from his office, not looking up from his screen. Out. I said, when will you be back? Later. He didn't press. She had friends, book club maybe, yoga, grief support group. He didn't ask because asking meant conversation, and conversation meant acknowledging that they'd become two strangers managing a household. She'd come home smelling different, not perfume, something else. Lavender maybe, soup, laughter. One night, James, 8 years old, asked, why does mom seem happier when she leaves than when she comes back? David looked at his son. What do you mean? She smiles in the car, then she comes inside and her face changes. David had no answer. The house was beautiful. The marriage was dying. And somewhere in Silver Lake, in a small bungalow with plants in the windows, Elena was learning what it felt like to be seen. Grace never meant to be the other woman. Elena never meant to fall. But grief opens doors. And sometimes the person who holds your hand in the dark becomes the person you can't let go of in the light. David didn't know any of this yet. He just knew that his wife had started drinking her morning coffee cold without complaining, and that felt like progress. Present day, Thursday afternoon, David sat in his Mercedes 2 blocks from a bungalow on Sunset Junction, Silver Lake, a neighborhood he'd driven through but never stopped in, hipster coffee shops, murals, people walking dogs that cost less than his watch. The blue keychain sat on his passenger seat. He'd Googled the address 3 days ago, 2847 Lucille Avenue, a rental. Zillow said $2,800 a month. 2 bedrooms, built in 1947, hardwood floors, charming original details. Elena had been at her sister's for 4 days this month already. Her sister lived in Pasadena. This wasn't Pasadena. David told himself he'd just drive by, confirm it was nothing. A friend's place maybe, somewhere she volunteered. But then he saw her car, the white Audi, parked in the driveway like it belonged there. He sat, watched, told himself to leave, didn't leave. An hour later, the front door opened. Elena stepped out with a woman David had never seen before, Asian, late 30s, early 40s, jeans and a flannel shirt, carrying a canvas grocery bag. They stood on the porch talking. The woman said something. Elena laughed, head back, genuine, the kind of laugh David hadn't heard in years, maybe ever. The woman touched Elena's arm, just briefly, casual, familiar. Elena leaned into it. David's chest tightened. They went back inside. He sat there another 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, not moving. A neighbor walked by with a stroller, glanced at him, kept walking. He should leave. This was insane. He was a 52-year-old man stalking his own wife from a luxury sedan, in a neighborhood where everyone could see him, but he couldn't move. The sun dropped lower, golden hour, the kind of light photographers pay for. Through the front window, curtains open, he saw them in the kitchen, dancing. No, not dancing, just moving together. The woman stirring something on the stove. Elena chopping vegetables. Normal, domestic, easy, the way married people move. David watched his wife exist in someone else's life. She looked happy, not magazine cover happy, not dinner party happy. Actually happy, light, Free. He started the car, drove home, said nothing to anyone. Friday morning, David called a private investigator. He found the name through a client who'd used one during a divorce. Discreet, professional, results in 72 hours. What do you need? The investigator asked. Male voice, flat, transactional. I need to know where my wife goes. Address? David gave him the Silver Lake bungalow. And what am I looking for specifically? David paused. The truth. That'll cost extra. It was a joke. David didn't laugh. The report arrived Monday. Encrypted email, 16 pages, photos, records, timeline. David opened it at 11 p.m. in his office. Elena was asleep upstairs, or pretending to sleep. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. Page 1. Subject background, Grace Chen, age 44, hospice nurse, Mercy General Medical Center, divorce 2019, no children. Resides at 2847 Lucille Ave, Silver Lake, rent $2,800 a month, drives a 2015 Honda CR-V. He remembered her now, the night nurse. Rosa's final months. She'd been kind. Elena had mentioned her a few times. Grace made Mom laugh today. Grace brought soup. Page 3. Timeline of contact. Subject and client's wife maintained contact following Rosa Reyes' death. April 2021. Initial contact. Weekly coffee meetings. Escalation. June 2023. Overnight stays begin. Current frequency. 4 to 6 nights per month. 4 to 6 nights. David scrolled to the photos. Elena and Grace at a farmer's market. Holding hands. Elena and Grace at a bookstore. Grace's arm around Elena's waist. Elena and Grace on the bungalow porch. Kissing. Not a quick kiss. Not a friendly kiss. The kind of kiss that meant home. David stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. Page 8. Financial records. The investigator had been thorough. Disturbing thorough. Joint venture identified. Subject and client's wife co-signed lease agreement for Silver Lake property. November 2023. Both names on utility bills. Joint grocery deliveries to address. They had a home together. A small, cheap, real home. While David paid the mortgage on a museum. Page 12. Legal records. This is where David stopped breathing. Marriage certificate located. Vermont State Records, March 15, 2024. Elena Marie Reyes Marshall and Grace Lynn Chen, officiant, Justice of the Peace, Burlington VT. Witnesses. 2. Names redacted per privacy laws. March, 8 months ago. His wife had married someone else. While still married to him. Bigamy. Illegal. Prosecutable. But that wasn't what made him feel like the room was tilting. It was the date. March 15th. Their anniversary. David and Elena had married March 15th, 15 years ago. She'd married Grace on the same day. David sat in his office until 3 a.m., reading the report over and over, looking for mistakes, alternative explanations. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe it wasn't legal. Maybe, no. The certificate was real. The signature was hers. The witness signatures were notarized. She'd stood in Vermont in front of strangers and promised forever to someone who wasn't him. And then she'd come home, slept in his bed, let him pay her bills, smiled at dinner parties, performed their marriage while living another one. David opened his desk drawer, pulled out the blue keychain. He turned the keys over in his hand. They were warm now, body heat from his palm. These keys opened a home he'd never been invited to. These keys meant his wife had been gone for years, and he'd never noticed. Tuesday morning, the coffee ritual. David made 2 cups, set one by Elena's side of the bed. She woke up, smiled sleepily, reached for it. "Thank you," she murmured. "You're welcome." She drank it cold, like always. He watched her, really looked. Her hair was different, shorter. When had she cut it? Her skin looked brighter. When had that happened? She wore a silver ring on her right hand, new, simple band. "That's pretty," he said, nodding at the ring. Elena glanced down. "Oh, yeah, Grace gave it to me. For my birthday." "Grace?" "From hospice, Mom's nurse. Remember, we stayed in touch. She's been really supportive." "That's nice," David said. His voice sounded normal, calm, like they were discussing weather. Elena smiled, finished her coffee. "I'm heading to Pasadena today. Marissa needs help with her new apartment." Marissa, her sister, not Vermont, not Silver Lake, not the truth. "How long will you be gone?" "Just the day. Maybe I'll stay over. I'll text you." "Sure." She kissed his cheek, left the room. 30 minutes later, her car pulled out of the driveway. David stood at the bedroom window, watched her go, then he went to his office, closed the door, called his real estate agent. "Karen, it's David Marshall." "David, good morning. What can I wanted to sell the house." Silence. "I'm sorry?" "The Palisades property. I want it sold. Fast, cash buyer, no contingencies. Can you do that?" "David, that's a $15 million, 14.2. I'll take 14.2. Close in 10 days. That's under market value. I know. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just need it done. Quietly. Can you do it? Or should I call someone else? Another pause. I can do it. Good. Send the paperwork today. I'll sign tonight. He hung up, opened his drawer, took out Elena's keys, the real ones, the house keys, leather fob, Mercedes logo, set them on his desk next to the blue fabric keychain. 2 sets of keys, 2 homes, 2 lives. She'd chosen. She just hadn't told him, so he'd choose too, and she wouldn't know until it was done. Wednesday night, David drove to Inglewood. Richard lived in a 1-bedroom above a laundromat, $1,400 a month. You could hear the dryers through the floor. He'd lived there 8 years, never complained. Called it honest rent for an honest space. David knocked. Richard opened the door in a Dodgers t-shirt and sweatpants, beer in hand. Dave? What? Can I come in? Richard looked at him, really looked. Yeah, man, come in. The apartment smelled like laundry detergent and leftover Thai food. A futon, a TV, a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and plywood. Everything David's house wasn't. You want a beer? David nodded. Richard got one from a mini fridge. They sat on the futon. The TV was on mute. Some basketball game. What's going on? Richard asked. David opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again, failed, then he just broke. Not tears, worse. The sound a man makes when something inside him snaps. Gut deep, humiliating. He put his face in his hands and made noises he didn't recognize as his own. Richard set down his beer, put a hand on David's shoulder, said nothing. It took 5 minutes before David could breathe normally. She married someone else, he finally said. In Vermont, 8 months ago, while married to me, on our anniversary. Richard's hand tightened on his shoulder. Grace, the hospice nurse. They have a place together in Silver Lake. She goes there 4 nights a week, and I thought she was at her sister's. Jesus. I gave her everything, Rich. Everything. The house, the cars, the life. I saved her mother. Everything but yourself, man. David looked at him. What? You gave her everything but yourself. Richard leaned back, rubbed his face. When's the last time you two had a real conversation? Not logistics. Not, when are you home? Or did you pay the gardener? When's the last time you asked her what she was feeling? When's the last time you were home for dinner? When's the last time you took her somewhere that wasn't a work event? When's the last time you looked at her and actually saw her? David's jaw tightened. I worked to give her that life, the house. The security she wanted. What did she want? Richard cut him off. Did you ask or did you just decide? I saved her from poverty, from watching her mother die in a county hallway. I gave her dignity. You gave her money. That's not the same thing. David stood, paced. The apartment was too small. Everything was too small. So I'm the bad guy? I'm the one who's wrong? She committed bigamy, Rich. She's been lying to me for 8 months. Maybe longer. I'm not saying she's right. Richard's voice stayed level. I'm saying you're not a victim. You're just surprised someone left before you did. I never left. Bro. Richard stood too. You left years ago. You just kept paying the mortgage. David drove home at midnight. The house was dark. Elena's car was gone. Staying at Marissa's, she'd texted. He went to their bedroom, stood in front of her nightstand. She kept it locked. Always had. He'd never asked why. Privacy. Everyone deserved privacy. He opened his tool drawer, found a screwdriver, jimmied the lock. It popped open. Inside, letters, dozens of them, folded notebook paper, envelopes. Some old, some recent. He pulled one out, dated 5 years ago. Elena's handwriting. David, I know you're busy, but I really think we should talk to someone, a therapist. I feel like we're drifting, and I don't know how to. It was unfinished. Unsent. He pulled out another. Same year. I made an appointment with a marriage counselor. Dr. Hernandez, Tuesday at 4 p.m. I know you have work, but this is important. Please come. He remembered that Tuesday. He'd canceled. Conference call. Tokyo client. Couldn't be moved. She'd never mention it again. He kept reading. Letter after letter. Unsent. Unheard. I'm lonely in this house. Sometimes I think you married a version of me that doesn't exist. I don't know who I am anymore. And maybe we weren't supposed to last. Maybe we were just supposed to save each other and then let go. Undated 3 years ago, 2 years, last year, then letters from Grace. Recent. Gentle handwriting. You deserve someone who sees you. I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm asking you to stop disappearing. When you're here, you're so alive. When you talk about home, you're a ghost. And at the bottom of the drawer, a small velvet box. David opened it. 2 silver bands, matching, simple, engraved inside. E plus G, 3/15/24. Finally, like she'd been waiting years. Like marrying Grace wasn't betrayal, it was escape. David sat on the bedroom floor, letters scattered around him, the house keys were in his pocket. He pulled them out. Leather fob, heavy, expensive. For 15 years, these keys had meant power, success, security. Now they felt like the keys to a prison. He'd built this place, bought every piece of furniture, chose every paint color, made it perfect. And somewhere along the way, perfect became empty. Elena hadn't betrayed him 8 months ago. She'd been asking him to see her for 5 years. And he'd been too busy building walls to notice she was suffocating inside them. Richard was right. David had left first. He just did it while sleeping in the same bed. He pulled out his phone, texted the real estate agent. "Paperwork signed. Let's move forward. I want this done by next Friday." She responded immediately. "Buyer secured. All cash. Closes in 9 days. We'll send final docs tomorrow." David looked around the bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Ocean view. A bed they hadn't made love in for 3 years. This house wasn't a home. It was a monument to two people who forgot how to be small enough to hold each other. He stood, put the letters back, closed the drawer, left the house keys on her nightstand, packed a suitcase, called Richard. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "Yeah, man, always." David walked out of the $15 million house and didn't look back. Behind him, the ocean roared against the cliffs. It had always been the loudest sound in that house. And the loneliest? Friday, 2 p.m. The escrow officer slid the final documents across the table. David signed, initialed, dated. The pen felt like it weighed 10 pounds. "And that's it," she said brightly, professional smile. She'd done this 1,000 times. "Congratulations, Mr. Marshall. The buyer is very excited." David nodded. Couldn't find words. $14.2 million. Wired to his account. Minus agent fees. Minus taxes he'd deal with later. The number was obscene, meaningless. He'd bought that house for $6 million 12 years ago. Made $8 million profit on a marriage that had died somewhere around year 7. Good investment. Terrible life. "Your wife didn't want to attend the closing?" the escrow officer asked, organizing papers. "She's out of town." "Oh, well, since you hold the title jointly, we'll need her signature on them. The house was in my name only, purchased before marriage. Post-nuptial agreement confirmed separate property." David's lawyer had been very clear about that. Very grateful for David's paranoia 15 years ago, when his accountant insisted on protecting his assets. The escrow officer's smile flickered. "I see. Well, then you're all set." David stood, shook her hand, walked out into bright November sunlight that hurt his eyes. The house was sold. Elena had no idea. Saturday morning. David returned to Palisades one last time. He'd been staying at Richard's all week, sleeping on the futon, listening to dryers rumble through the floor. He'd slept better than he had in years, but he needed to get his things. Elena's car wasn't in the driveway. Good. He had maybe 2 hours. He packed quickly. Clothes, documents, photos of James, his father's watch, things that mattered, left everything else. The furniture, the art, the life they'd curated together. In the kitchen, he made coffee one last time. French press, the expensive beans, made 2 cups out of habit, stared at both of them, set his house keys, the real ones, on the marble counter next to the closing documents, left them there like a corpse. The ocean roared outside. He'd paid $8,000 a month in property taxes to hear that sound. He didn't think he'd miss it. The front door opened. David turned. "Elena." But it was James. His son stood in the doorway with a duffel bag, hoodie, sneakers, 19 years old, home from USC for the weekend. He'd texted Thursday saying he'd be back Sunday. David had forgotten. "Dad?" James looked around, saw the suitcases, the papers on the counter, the keys. "What's going on?" David's throat closed. "James, I didn't know you were. I came home early." James dropped his bag, walked to the counter, picked up the closing statement, read it. His face went very still. "You sold the house?" "Yes." "When?" "Yesterday." "Does Mom know?" David said nothing. James looked at him, really looked. And something in his son's face, the disappointment, the anger, the lack of surprise, made David feel like he was standing in front of a judge. "Where is she?" James asked quietly. "I don't know. She said Pasadena." "She's not in Pasadena." "I know." You know," James laughed, sharp, bitter. "You know, okay, so you know about Grace." David's chest tightened. "How do you—" "I've known for 6 months, Dad." James set down the papers. "I went to visit Mom. She said she was at Aunt Marissa's. I showed up to surprise her. Guess who was surprised?" "James." "I saw them together, at a restaurant, Silver Lake. She was holding hands with another woman across the table, laughing, looking happier than I'd ever seen her." James's voice cracked. "And I left. Didn't say anything. Drove back to campus and pretended I didn't see it. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask? James's voice rose. You think I wanted to be the one to blow up our family? You're the husband. You're supposed to notice when your wife is gone. But you never did you? Because you were gone too. That's not fair. Isn't it? James was shouting now. When's the last time you ate dinner with us? Dad? When's the last time you asked Mom how she was? Not how was your day. Actually asked what she was feeling. When's the last time you looked up from your laptop long enough to see that she was disappearing? I was working. I was providing for what? James slammed his hand on the counter. For this? This museum? This empty fucking house that nobody lived in? We had everything and nothing at the same time. Do you understand that? David stepped back. He'd never heard his son swear, never seen him this angry. Mom tried, James continued, quieter now, deadlier. She tried so hard. I remember, I was 13, 14. She asked you to come to my soccer games. You came to 2. Out of 30. She asked you to go to therapy. You said you were too busy. She asked you to take a vacation, just the 3 of us. You said maybe next year. And next year. And next year. I was building a life for us. You were building a fortress, and you locked us out. James wiped his face. He was crying. She begged you to see her for years, and you just didn't. So, yeah. She found someone who did, and you know what? I don't blame her. The words hit like a hammer. You don't mean that, David said. I do. James looked at him. What she did was wrong. Lying was wrong. But, Dad, you abandoned us first. You just did it while paying the mortgage. There it was. The truth David had been running from all week. Richard had said it. Now his son, he hadn't been betrayed. He'd been absent. And absence is its own kind of betrayal. When does the new owner take possession? James asked after a long silence. 2 weeks. Did you tell Mom? No. So she's going to come home one day and find out you sold our house without telling her. Just ripped away the only stability she had left. She has another house. With Grace. That's not the point. James shook his head. You're doing to her what she did to you. Secret life. Secret decisions. You think that makes you better? She married someone else while married to me. That's bigamy. That's illegal. And you're punishing her by destroying the one thing she never betrayed. The home we raised her in. This was my home too, Dad. Did you think about that, or was this just about your revenge? David opened his mouth, closed it. He hadn't thought about James. He'd thought about justice. Anger, the sale, the exposure. He hadn't thought about his son coming home to find his childhood erased. I'm sorry, David whispered. Are you? James picked up his bag. Or are you just sorry you got caught being as selfish as she is? Where are you going? Back to campus. I can't be here. James, you sold my home, Dad, without asking, without warning. Just decided for everyone. You know what? You and Mom deserve each other. You both think you're the victim. You're both wrong. James walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Grace is kind, he said quietly. She asks about me, remembers my classes, texts me stupid memes. She's been more of a parent these past 6 months than either of you. She's sleeping with your mother. When she's seeing my mother, there's a difference. When's the last time you saw her, Dad? Like, actually saw her? David had no answer. James left. The door closed. The house was silent except for the ocean. David sat on the kitchen floor with 2 cups of cold coffee. His phone buzzed. Text from the realtor. All funds transferred. Congratulations. Congratulations. He'd just made $8 million and lost his family. Another text. This one from Elena. Be home tomorrow night. We need to talk. She knew something, maybe not about the house, but something. David looked around the kitchen. Marble counters he'd chosen, appliances he'd researched, light fixtures that cost more than Richard's monthly rent. He'd built a perfect house. But James was right. Nobody had lived here. They'd just existed. 3 people orbiting each other in expensive rooms, calling it family. He stood, picked up his suitcases, took one last look. 23 years, reduced to keys on a counter and papers that said sold. He thought about the blue keychain, the one Elena hid in her purse, the keys to Grace's bungalow. Those keys were worn smooth, turned 1,000 times, used, loved, real. These keys, his keys, were pristine, barely touched, because this house had never needed opening. It was already a tomb. David walked out, loaded his car, drove away. In the rearview mirror, the house got smaller, gone. 2 weeks from now, a new family would move in. They'd make it a home, fill it with noise and mess and life. But right now, it was just an empty monument to 2 people who forgot that love requires more than money. It requires presence. And David had been absent for 15 years. Elena had been absent for 1. But his son was right. He'd abandoned them first. He just did it slowly, quietly, with a paycheck and a title and the belief that providing was the same as loving. It wasn't. And now everyone was paying the price. Richard's apartment, Monday through Thursday. David slept on the futon, woke to the sound of dryers rumbling below. Industrial hum that shook the floorboards at 6 a.m. when the laundromat opened. He didn't mind. It was a sound that meant people, work, life happening. The ocean had been beautiful, but it was the sound of isolation. Waves hitting rocks with nobody listening. These dryers meant someone was washing their kid's soccer uniform, someone's work clothes, someone's life. Tangible and real. David lay there listening, learning what normal sounded like. Tuesday. He rode the bus for the first time in 20 years. Richard had taken his car to work. His Camry needed a transmission, so he'd borrowed David's Mercedes. "Don't wreck it," David had said. "It costs more than your rent." "It costs more than my dignity," Richard had replied. "But I'll be gentle." So David walked 6 blocks to the bus stop, Metro Line 40, stood with a dozen other people. Construction workers, students, a woman with 2 toddlers in a stroller. The bus smelled like disinfectant and human proximity. David sat by a window, watched LA pass, strip malls, taco trucks, storefronts with hand-painted signs, real neighborhoods, where people lived, not just invested. A kid, maybe 7, sat across from him, swinging his legs, stared at David's watch, Rolex. $30,000 on his wrist. David took it off, put it in his pocket. The kid lost interest, went back to his tablet. Wednesday, David sat in a park, not a nice park, just a neighborhood square, grass that needed mowing, playground equipment from the 90s, a basketball court with a bent rim. He sat on a bench, watched. A couple on a blanket, late 20s, sharing fries from a paper bag, laughing. She leaned over, stole a fry from his mouth. He protested. She kissed him. Simple, easy, theirs. David tried to remember the last time he'd shared fries with Elena. Couldn't. Tried to remember the last time they'd laughed together. Not polite dinner party laughter. Real laughter. Nothing. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, found one from 5 years ago. Christmas. Elena smiling at the camera. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, empty eyes. He'd taken that photo, hadn't noticed the emptiness. Or maybe he had, and chosen not to see it. He realized he didn't know her favorite flower. 15 years married. He'd bought her flowers 100 times. Expensive arrangements from that place on Montana Avenue. $300 a bouquet. But he'd never asked what she liked. Just told the florist something elegant. Elegant, generic, safe. What was her favorite song? Her favorite movie? Did she like coffee or tea? Or what did she dream about? Before sleep? What made her laugh until she couldn't breathe? He didn't know. He knew her social security number, her clothing size, her mother's maiden name, but he didn't know her. Thursday afternoon, he texted Elena. "The house sold. You should call your lawyer." No explanation. No context, just the fact. She responded 7 minutes later. "What? Then what? Then, David, what are you talking about? Then call me now." He turned off his phone, sat in the silence of Richard's apartment, heard the dryers, heard traffic, heard life. Let her sit with it the way he'd been sitting with her secret. Not revenge, just space. He needed space. It rained Thursday night. First rain of the season, November storm. The kind that makes LA drivers forget how to function. David walked in it, no umbrella, no jacket, just walked down Crenshaw, past closed shops, past people huddled in doorways, past a taco stand where the owner stood under an awning watching the street. "You okay, man?" the owner called. David stopped, looked at him. "I don't know." The man nodded, like that was a reasonable answer. "You want coffee? On the house. You look like you need it." David walked over, stood under the awning. The man poured coffee from a thermos into a paper cup, handed it over. "Thanks," David said. "De nada." The man lit a cigarette. "Rain's good. Washes things clean." David sipped the coffee. Cheap, bitter, perfect. "You lose something?" the man asked. "Everything." "Everything? Everything? Or just the stuff that looked like everything?" David stared at him. The man shrugged. "My ex-wife took the house, the car, the business, left me with my truck and my cart. Thought I was finished." He gestured at the taco stand. "Turns out I just needed less weight." Does it get easier?" "No, but you get stronger, or at least more honest." The man flicked ash. "The rain helps. You can cry, and nobody knows." David looked at his coffee cup. Steam rising, rain falling. He wasn't crying, but he could. Maybe that was progress. Friday morning. Richard's girlfriend, Sandra, nurse at Cedars-Sinai, made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, coffee from a $4 can of Folgers. David sat at the small table, watched her cook, She hummed while she worked, something Latin, rhythmic. You doing okay? She asked, not turning around. No. Good. Good? She plated the eggs, set them in front of him. Rich told me what happened. Not details, just that you're going through it. The fact that you said no means you're being honest. Honest is good. David picked up his fork. This is the first home-cooked meal I've had in, I don't know, months, maybe a year. Your wife doesn't cook? She does. Did. I was never home to eat it. Sandra sat across from him, poured coffee for both of them, chipped mugs. My first husband worked all the time, thought he was doing it for us. Turns out he was doing it to avoid us. Took me 5 years to figure that out. Another 2 to leave. Do you regret it? The marriage? No. Taught me what I didn't want. She sipped her coffee. The years I stayed after I knew it was over? Yeah. Those I regret, because I was lying too, pretending it was fine when it wasn't. David ate. The eggs were good. Simple. Real. Thank you, he said. For what? For making me breakfast. For being honest. Sandra smiled. You're welcome. And David? Whatever happens next, don't do it out of anger. Do it because it's right. There's a difference. Friday afternoon, David sat on Richard's fire escape. Cigarette smoke drifted up from somewhere. Car horns. A dog barking. Music from an open window. Something Spanish. Trumpet heavy. His phone was still off. Elena had probably called Richard. Probably called James. Probably called her lawyer. The storm had passed. Sky was clearing. Cold sunshine. David thought about Grace's bungalow. The one he'd watched through the window. Elena dancing. Laughing. Alive. He didn't hate Grace. He should. She was the other woman. The homewrecker. But Grace hadn't wrecked anything. She just walked into a house that was already ruins and made Elena remember what it felt like to be seen. The real question, when had David stopped seeing her? Year 3? Year 5? Their wedding day? Maybe he'd never seen her at all. Maybe he'd just seen a woman who needed saving and mistaken gratitude for love. Maybe she'd seen a man with money who could erase her fear and mistaken security for love. Maybe they'd both been lying from the start. Just 2 people drowning, grabbing onto each other, calling it rescue. The sun set. Orange light between buildings. David turned his phone back on. 47 missed calls. 63 texts. He read one. From Elena. Tomorrow night, your brother's place. We need to talk. Grace is coming too. Don't argue. Just be there. Not a request. A demand. David typed back. Okay. 1 word. All he had left. He sat on the fire escape until the light was gone. Below, the city hummed. People going home, people leaving home, people searching for home. David was somewhere in that crowd now. Not above it, not separate, just another person who'd lost something and didn't know how to find himself. But for the first time in 15 years, he wasn't hiding behind a wall. He was just here. In the mess. In the rain. In the truth. It hurt. But at least it was real. Saturday, 6 p.m. The knock came exactly when Elena said it would. David opened the door. Elena stood there in jeans and a sweater he'd never seen before. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked younger, smaller, terrified. Behind her, Grace. Simple black jacket, hands in pockets, eyes cautious. Can we come in? Elena's voice was tight, controlled. David stepped aside. Richard was in the kitchen, pretending to wash dishes, gave David a look. You good? David nodded. The 3 of them stood in the tiny living room. Futon, TV, fire escape visible through the window. Everything David's life used to mock. Elena looked around. Her hands were shaking. So, this is where you've been? She said. Yes. You sold our house? Yes. Without telling me? Yes. Her face crumpled, then hardened. How could you? David looked at her, really looked, for the first time in years. How could I? He said quietly. How could you? That's different. Is it? His voice stayed level, calm. You married someone else. Kept a second home, built a whole life I knew nothing about. For 8 months, maybe longer. 5 years, Grace said softly. Both of them turned to her. Grace met David's eyes. We've known each other 5 years, since Rosa died. We were just friends for the first 3, then, she trailed off. Then we weren't. Elena closed her eyes. Grace. No. Grace's voice was gentle but firm. He deserves the truth. All of it. David felt something crack in his chest. 5 years, not 8 months. 5 years of slow betrayal. While he paid the mortgage. While he slept beside her. While he thought they were fine. I want to hate you, he said to Elena. I should hate you. Then hate me. She was crying now. Hate me for lying. Hate me for cheating. Hate me for marrying her while married to you. Hate me for... I can't. David's voice broke. Because I did the same thing. Silence. I didn't marry anyone else, he continued. I didn't have an affair, but I abandoned you, years ago. I just did it while living in the same house. David, when did you ask me to go to therapy? What year? Elena wiped her face. 5 years ago. What did I say? You said we were fine. We just needed a bigger house. Did we get a bigger house? We renovated, added the west wing. Did that fix anything? Elena's shoulders shook. No. David turned to Grace. What's her favorite flower? Grace answered immediately. Sunflowers, because her mother used to grow them in their backyard in Boyle Heights. David looked at Elena. I didn't know that. 15 years married. I bought you flowers every month. Never asked what you liked. It doesn't matter. It does. He stepped closer, not threatening, just present. What's your favorite song? The one you hum when you think no one's listening? Elena stared at him, tears streaming. Bésame mucho, Grace said quietly. The version her mother used to play on Sunday mornings. I don't know that, David said. I know your social security number, your clothing size, your mother's maiden name. I know everything that mattered for taxes and paperwork. I don't know anything that mattered for you. Mama stopped. Elena's voice was raw. Please stop. Why? Because it hurts? Good. It should hurt. We hurt each other for years. You just had the courage to leave. I didn't. I stayed and disappeared at the same time. Richard appeared from the kitchen, set down 3 cups of coffee on the small table. Didn't say anything. Just placed them there like an offering. Went back to the kitchen. They sat, David on the futon, Elena and Grace in the 2 mismatched chairs. Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. Didn't drink, just held it. I was so angry when they called me about the house, she said. My lawyer. Telling me it's sold, that you'd done it without me. I wanted to kill you. I know. But then I drove here, and I saw this place, your brother's apartment, and I realized... She looked up at him. You left everything, not just me. Everything you built, the life, the image. You actually walked away. I had to. Why? Because that house was killing me. Slowly. I thought it was home. Turns out, it was just an expensive place to hide. Grace spoke for the first time since sitting down. David, can I ask you something? He nodded. Are you going to press charges? The room went very still. Elena's face drained of color. What? Bigamy is illegal, David said, more in California. You married Grace while still married to me. That's prosecutable. I could... David, please. Elena's voice cracked. I could destroy you legally, he continued. Make sure you never practice medicine. Your translation work requires licensing. I could take everything in the divorce. Sue Grace for alienation of affection. I could burn both your lives down. Grace set down her coffee cup, leaned forward. Elena wanted to divorce you. 2 years ago. I told her to do it honestly. She wouldn't. She was scared. Scared of what? David asked. Of being nothing again, Grace said. Of going back to who she was before you saved her. Poor, powerless. Her mother's daughter with medical debt and no escape. Elena covered her face with her hands. Grace continued, her voice steady. She chose security over honesty. I'm not defending that. I'm explaining it. She loved me, but she was terrified of losing the life you gave her. So she tried to keep both, me in safety, love in the fortress. Why are you telling me this? David asked. Because she's broken enough. Grace's eyes were wet now. We both are. I loved someone who couldn't fully choose me. She loved someone who couldn't see her. We built our relationship in secret, and it poisoned everything. We broke up last week. Elena looked at her sharply. Grace, it's true. Grace didn't look away from David. We can't survive sunlight. We were built on shadow, and I can't live like that anymore. She turned to David fully. I'm not asking you to forgive her, or me. I'm asking you not to destroy her. Please. She's already lost everything that mattered. Don't take what's left. David looked at Elena, really looked, not the wife who betrayed him, not the woman who lied, just Elena, 54 years old, immigrant daughter, medical translator, mother, person who tried to save herself the only way she knew how. Did you ever love me? He asked. The question hung in the air. Elena took a long time to answer. When she did, her voice was barely audible. I tried. I really tried. But I loved the safety more than the man. And by the time I realized that, it had been years, and I didn't know how to leave. So I found someone who made me feel alive. And I lied to everyone, including myself. She looked at him. I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too, he said. For building a prison and calling it a home. For thinking money was the same as love. For disappearing while telling myself I was present. They sat in silence. Richard's apartment hummed with city noise, sirens in the distance, someone's music. The dryer's below. Life, messy, real, nothing like the silent ocean. I'm not pressing charges, David said finally. Elena's head snapped up. What? I'm not pressing charges. I'm not suing. I'm not destroying you. He set down his coffee. We're getting divorced. You get half the house proceeds, $7.1 million. That's fair. That's what you're legally entitled to. California is a community property state. But the prenup was solid. Still, you earned it. 15 years of pretending is work too. David, but I need to know something, he interrupted. Did I ever have a chance? If I'd been different? If I'd seen you? Could we have? No. Elena's voice was soft but certain. No, David. We were never right. We just needed each other at the right time. You needed someone to need you. I needed someone to save me. That's not love. That's transaction. He nodded, felt something release in his chest. Relief, grief, truth. Okay, he said. Grace stood. I should go. This is between you two. Wait, David stood too. Are you staying together? Grace looked at Elena. Long look, sad. No, we're not. We tried to build something real on a foundation of lies. Doesn't work. I wish it did, but it doesn't. Elena started crying again. Silent tears. Grace touched her shoulder, briefly, gently, then walked to the door. She paused, looked back at David. Thank you for not destroying her. That took courage. No, David said. It took letting go. There's a difference. Grace nodded, left. David and Elena sat in Richard's apartment as night fell. They didn't talk, didn't need to. Eventually, Elena stood. I should go too. Where will you stay? Hotel, for now. Then I'll figure it out. She picked up her bag. The $7 million. I don't want it. Elena, I don't want it because you gave it. I want to earn it. My lawyer says I'm entitled to it legally, so I'll take it. But I'm going to do something with it. Something that matters. Maybe a scholarship fund. For translator students. For immigrant kids who need help. Something Rosa would have been proud of. David nodded. That's good. She walked to the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who sees you. Really sees you. You deserve that. So do you. She smiled. Sad. Real. Maybe in the next life. She left. The door closed. Richard emerged from the kitchen, sat next to David on the futon. You okay? He asked. No, David said, but I will be. That's all anyone can ask. They sat in silence, brothers, in a small apartment, with cheap coffee and borrowed time. Outside, the city breathed, and for the first time in 15 years, David breathed with it. 1 week later, Wednesday morning, the lawyer's office smelled like leather and old paper, 3rd floor, Century City, windows overlooking the city David used to navigate like he owned it. Elena sat across the conference table. Her lawyer beside her, David's lawyer beside him. 4 people dividing 15 years into numbers. Marshall is agreeing to an equal split of the house proceeds, David's lawyer said. $7.1 million to Mrs. Marshall. No contest. He's also waiving spousal support claims. Elena's lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, looked suspicious. And in exchange? Nothing, David said. She gets half. That's what's fair. Mr. Marshall, I advise against... I know what you advise. This is what I'm doing. Elena stared at the papers in front of her. Divorce petition. Irreconcilable differences. No fault. Clean. You could take me for everything, she said quietly. The bigamy, you could, I know. David signed a document. Initialed another. I'm not going to. Why? He looked at her. Because revenge doesn't fix anything, and we both have enough to rebuild with. Patricia slid papers across. Mrs. Marshall, if you sign here, here, and here, we can file today. 6-month waiting period. Divorce finalized by May. Elena picked up the pen. Her hand shook. I really am sorry, she whispered. I know, David said. Me too. She signed. He signed. The lawyers witnessed. 15 years, 3 signatures done. Thursday afternoon, coffee shop in Westwood, near campus. James sat across from David, iced coffee between them. Textbook open, but ignored. Mom called me, James said. Told me about the divorce? Yeah. She said you gave her half, no fight. That's right. James stirred his coffee with a straw. Round and round. Why? Because she earned it. 15 years of living in that house with me. That's worth something. Even though she cheated? Even though we both checked out years before anyone cheated. David sipped his coffee. Tasted burnt. How are you doing? James shrugged. I don't know. Weird. My parents are getting divorced. My childhood home is gone. Everything's different. I'm sorry I didn't ask you before I sold it. You should be. You're right. James looked up, surprised. That's it? No justification? What justification is there? I was angry. I was hurt. I made a decision that affected you without thinking about you. That was wrong. They sat in silence. Students around them laughing, studying, living normal college lives. Grace texted me yesterday, James said. David's chest tightened. What did she say? She said she and Mom broke up, said it wasn't working, said she hopes I don't hate her. Do you? James thought about it. No, yeah, she slept with my mom while my mom was married. That's messed up. But she was also the only adult who actually asked me how I was doing, who remembered I existed as something other than a prop in their drama. I'm sorry, David said, for making you a prop. Are you going to keep saying sorry, or are you going to actually change? The question hit hard. I don't know, David said honestly. I'm trying to figure out who I am without the house, without the marriage, without the identity I built. Who do you think you are? David looked at his son, 19 years old, smarter than both his parents. I think I'm a man who spent 15 years hiding, and I'm tired of hiding. James nodded slowly. That's a start. Can I ask you something? David leaned forward. If I'd asked, really asked, what you needed from me, what would you have said? James's eyes filled. I would have said show up, not just physically. Show up and be there. Ask me about my life. Remember what I care about. Stop checking your phone when I'm talking. Stop treating our family like a meeting you're late for. I can do that now, David said. If you'll let me. Can you? I don't know, but I want to try. James wiped his face with his sleeve. I'm going to need proof, not promises. Proof. Okay. What would proof look like? Come to my game next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. It's just intramural soccer. Nothing important, but I want you there, phone off, actually watching. I'll be there. Don't just say it, do it. I will. They stood. Awkward moment. Then James stepped forward, hugged his father. Hard, brief, real. First hug like that in years. When they separated, both had wet eyes. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kid. James grabbed his textbook. I gotta get to class. Text me. For real this time. I will. James left. David sat alone with burnt coffee and the first hope he'd felt in months. Friday evening. The same park David had visited during his solitude week. Grace sat on the bench. Called him that morning. Asked if they could talk. He arrived on time. She was already there. 2 coffees and paper cups beside her. Thanks for coming, she said. David sat. Took one of the coffees. Thanks for the coffee. They watched kids on the playground. A dad pushing his daughter on a swing. Her laughter carrying. I wanted to thank you, Grace said, for not pressing charges, for not destroying Elena's career. You could have. I know. Why didn't you? David sipped his coffee. Better than the burnt stuff from yesterday. Because it wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have just made more pain. That's surprisingly evolved for someone who just found out his wife committed bigamy. I had a week to sit with it, and a brother who won't let me bullshit myself. Grace smiled sadly. Richard's good people. Yeah, he is. They sat in silence. The swing creaked. The daughter squealed. The father laughed. Elena and I broke up, Grace said. She told you that night, but I wanted you to hear it from me too. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the right thing. We built our relationship on secrecy, on stolen time, on her running from you and me, running from loneliness. That's not a foundation, that's quicksand. Do you regret it? Grace thought about it. I regret the pain we caused. I don't regret loving her. Even if it was wrong, it was real, at least for me. She loved you too, David said. Maybe not enough to choose you fully, but she did love you. I know. That's what makes it sad. We could have had something real, if we'd started honestly, but we didn't. And you can't build a home on lies, no matter how pretty the lies are. David nodded. Yeah, I'm learning that too. What now for you? I don't know, therapy probably. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be successful. Spend time with my son. Maybe get to know my brother better. He's been there my whole life, and I barely know him. That sounds good. What about you? Back to work. I took a week off. Hospice doesn't stop because your life implodes. She smiled. And maybe eventually I'll try dating someone I don't have to hide. Someone who chooses me in daylight. That you deserve that. So do you. That night, David sat on Richard's fire escape. He pulled the wedding ring off his finger. 14-karat gold, simple band, engraved inside E+D 3115.09. He didn't throw it away, didn't want to. It represented something. Not love, maybe, but time, effort, a version of himself he'd been. He found an envelope in Richard's junk drawer, put the ring inside, wrote a note on a piece of notebook paper. James, this ring represents 15 years of promises. Some kept, most broken. I'm giving it to you not because I want you to remember your parents' marriage, but because I want you to remember this. Love is more than a promise. It's a daily choice. I forgot that. I thought showing up meant providing. I thought love meant security. I was wrong. Real love means seeing someone, asking them what they need, being present even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. I failed at that. Your mother and I both did. We tried to love each other, but we never learned how. Don't make that mistake. When you find someone, ask them about their dreams, their fears, their favorite flower, the song that makes them cry, and then show up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I love you. I'm sorry I forgot how to show it. Dad. He sealed the envelope, addressed it, would mail it tomorrow. The ring was gone, the marriage was over, the house was sold. But somehow, sitting on a fire escape above a laundromat in Inglewood, David felt lighter than he had in 15 years. 6 months later, May, David lived in Long Beach now, small condo, 2-bedroom, second floor, $2,200 a month. He could hear his neighbors, footsteps above, TV through the wall, music from the courtyard. He liked it. The furniture was from IKEA. Assembled it himself. YouTube tutorials and an Allen wrench. Took him 3 days. The bookshelf was slightly crooked. He kept it anyway. He cooked now. Real cooking. Not takeout, not meal services, actual grocery shopping. Recipes from a stained cookbook Richard's girlfriend gave him. He burned things, undersalted things, learned. Work was different too. Part-time consulting, 3 days a week. Enough to live comfortably, not enough to hide behind. He'd turned down 2 major clients, too much travel, too many late nights. His therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, had asked him why. Because I don't want to disappear again, he'd said. She'd nodded, written something down. That's good awareness. Twice a week, he volunteered at a community garden, turned soil, planted tomatoes, talked to a 70-year-old named Earl who told him stories about his wife of 48 years. Secret to marriage, Earl had said, hands deep in dirt. Show up every damn day, even when you don't want to, especially then. David had nodded, wished he'd learned that 20 years ago. He'd started dating, sort of. Her name was Linda, 48, librarian, divorced 3 years. 2 grown kids, no pretense, no games. They'd met at a bookstore. She was shelving. He was browsing. He'd asked for a recommendation. She'd handed him the remains of the day. It's about a man who spent his whole life serving others and forgot to live, she'd said. Thought you might relate. That obvious? You have the look. What look? Someone who's rebuilding. They'd gotten coffee, then dinner, then more coffee. Slow, careful. Like 2 people who'd been burned learning how to hold warmth again. She knew about Elena. He'd told her the 3rd date, expected judgment, got understanding. My ex-husband cheated, she'd said, for 2 years, with his business partner. When I found out, I wanted to burn his life down. Legally could have, didn't. Why not? Because revenge is just pain you pass to someone else, and I was tired of hurting. David had kissed her that night. First kiss in 16 years, that wasn't a performance. Tuesday evening. David was making pasta, actual homemade pasta, flour everywhere, when his doorbell rang. He wasn't expecting anyone. Linda was at book club. Richard was working late. He opened the door. Elena. She looked different. Hair shorter, chin length, no makeup, jeans and a plain t-shirt, sneakers. He'd never seen her in sneakers. Hi, she said. Hi. Can we talk? He stepped aside. She came in. Looked around. Took in the IKEA furniture. The crooked bookshelf. The pasta-making disaster on the counter. You cook now, she said. I'm learning. It smells good. It's a mess, but yeah. He wiped his hands on a towel. You want coffee? I actually know how to make it properly now, she smiled. Small, real. Sure. He made coffee. The cheap stuff, Folgers. She didn't complain. They sat on his second-hand couch. City noise through the open window. Someone's music. Kids playing. You look good, she said. Thanks. You too. Different. I cut my hair. Felt like I needed to look like someone new. She sipped her coffee. I came to tell you something. Grace and I tried again, 2 months ago. Thought maybe we could make it work now that everything was honest. David's chest tightened. And we couldn't. We were each other's escape, not each other's home. Turns out when you build something in shadow, it can't survive the sun. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was right. We loved each other, but we loved the idea more than the reality. She set down her coffee. I sold the Silver Lake place, bought a small condo in Pasadena, 1 bedroom. I can walk to the grocery store. That sounds nice. It is. And I got a job, teaching ESL at the community college. Turns out, having a thick accent yourself makes you a better teacher. She laughed, soft. I make $42,000 a year. It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it. That's good, Elena. Really good. The settlement money? I set up the scholarship fund? Rosa Reyes Memorial Scholarship for immigrant students studying healthcare. First recipients start this fall. David felt something warm in his chest. She would have loved that. I think so too. Elena looked at him. I came to say thank you for not destroying me when you could have, for giving me half when you didn't have to, for letting me start over. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You had every right to burn my life down. You chose mercy instead. That's not nothing. You're welcome then. They sat in comfortable silence, something they'd never managed in 15 years of marriage. Do you hate me? Elena asked quietly. David thought about it, really thought. No, he said. I don't hate you. I don't love you either. Not anymore. But I don't hate you. I just don't need you to complete me, and that's okay. Elena nodded, tears in her eyes, but smiling. That's the healthiest thing you've ever said to me. Therapy helps. Good, keep going. I will. Are you going? Yeah, twice a week. Turns out I have abandonment issues and a savior complex and some internalized homophobia to work through. That's a lot. It is, but I'm doing it. She stood. I should go. I just wanted to see you. Make sure you were okay. I am. Are you? Getting there. He walked her to the door. They stood in the doorway. Two people who'd spent 15 years together and barely knew each other. Two people finally becoming strangers in the kindest way. If you ever need anything, David said, I'm here, not as a husband, just as someone who cares. Same. She hugged him, brief, real, then pulled back. There's someone, isn't there? She asked. I can tell. Maybe. Early days. Good. You deserve someone who sees you, actually sees you. So do you. Maybe next time, she smiled, started down the stairs, stopped, turned back. David, we would have killed each other, slowly, if we'd stayed. I know, but I'm glad we tried. Even if we failed, we tried. Me too, she left. David stood in his doorway, watched her get into her car, a used Honda now, not the Audi, and drive away. He went back inside. Back to his pasta disaster. Linda would be there in an hour. James was coming for dinner tomorrow. Richard on Sunday. His life was smaller now, cheaper, simpler, but it was his. And for the first time in 20 years, David wasn't performing for anyone. He was just living, messy, imperfect, right? Real. He finished making pasta. It was lumpy, overcooked. He ate it anyway. It tasted like freedom. Christmas morning, Richard's apartment, 3 men in a small room, David, Richard, James. Decorations from the dollar store. A plastic tree, 4 feet tall, pre-lit, half the lights dead. They'd bought it together, argued about whether to return it, decided the broken lights gave it character. Paper plates on the coffee table. Richard's girlfriend Sandra had made tamales, real ones. The kind that took hours. The kind that meant love. Folgers coffee and chipped mugs. James filmed it on his phone. This is the first real Christmas we've had, he said. David looked at his son, his brother. The small apartment with thin walls and working-class sounds. Neighbors arguing upstairs. Someone's TV too loud. The laundromat humming below. It was the most beautiful room he'd ever been in. You know what's funny? Richard said, mouthful of tamale. You spent 15 years in a mansion. Now you're here, eating on paper plates. And you look happier than I've ever seen you. David smiled. The house was never a home. It was a monument to two people who forgot how to be small enough to hold each other. That's deep, bro. I've been in therapy. They laughed. James plugged in the tree lights. They flickered, buzzed. Half worked, half didn't. Should we fix it? James asked. No, David said. Woolsey, leave it. It's perfect anyway. Richard raised his mug. Coffee sloshed. To losing everything that didn't matter. David raised his. To finding what does. James raised his. To being here. They drank. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, Elena taught grammar to students who needed hope. Somewhere, Grace held a dying stranger's hand. Somewhere, Linda wrapped presents in a house that knew her name. And here in this small room, 3 men sat. The lights flickered. The coffee cooled. No one spoke. The room held them. And for the first time in years, David felt like he was somewhere he belonged. Not because it was expensive. Because it was real.